thank you so much to get two DAM veterans in the year for this webinar. Thank you, Mark, CEO of Santa Cruz. Thank you, Ralph from DAM News, or just maybe say those in one way to our attendees.
Sorry, did you say introduce ourselves?
Yeah, just a quick word.
Okay, sure. Yeah, hi, I'm Mark Hilton, CEO and one of the three founders of Santa Cruz Software. And we'll be talking a little bit more about Santa Cruz Software in just a minute.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm Ralph Windsor. I'm publisher of DAM News, which is a digital asset management industry trade journal that's been around for a few years. Prior to doing that, I was a DAM consultant. I've been a DAM software developer, project manager, digital asset manager, and I've done that for nearly 30 years now. And I feel like adding man and boy after that. But yeah, I've done it for quite a while this time, I would say.
Thank you so much, Ralph. And of course, first of all, Happy New Year to all of you. So all of the best wishes for your family and friends, etc. All of the success also in your different projects, and especially maybe here at the top of the DAM system. And myself, I'm managing Activo. We're also working alongside in more than 1 year with Ralph, and also we are delighted to be also a partner of Mark for this amazing technology that we will cover during this session. So maybe I think the first thing, so just to give you an idea, we spend more or less 10 minutes to introduce both of the company, what we are doing. Of course, it's driven by the technology that Mark and Santa Cruz is working on since a couple of times, and of course, with some amazing stuff that has been released shortly end of last year. And then I will organize a fire chat between Mark and Ralph alongside DAM, creative operations, workflows, and finally how we can figure out today whoever you are, can be your designer, brands, agencies, because more and more you will see that we need to personalize, to localize the content alongside the DAM, or maybe not the DAM. That's one of the questions that we have to give an answer. So stage is your Mark, so to introduce Santa Cruz Software.
Thanks, Frédéric. Yeah, so Santa Cruz Software started in 2012. It was actually founded by three of us. Two of us actually are former Adobe people. I was at Adobe for 10 years. I was vice president of product management for the Creative Pro products. Another founder was director of engineering for many of Adobe's early hosted services. And our third founder is somebody who's very well known in the Adobe technology space. We started the company trying to solve what we thought was a pretty interesting problem, which was to basically bring Adobe InDesign to a larger audience, meaning a tool that could be integrated into other tools for non-designers. So you didn't have to be an expert in InDesign to use our technology. And what we quickly found was that this technology found a home in the digital asset management space. What we learned was digital asset management companies were struggling to try and get their users beyond just, say, the core marketing team to use the DAM. And so what they learned and what we learned is if you can embed creative technology directly into the DAM, then you can get a broader set of people using that DAM. And so that's really where we've evolved over the last 12 years. And if you move on to the next slide. So PrintUI was our first product. It's print templates for DAMs. It's built right into the DAM. Designers upload the templates directly through InDesign. It stays as an InDesign document through the entire process, and it's actually rendered by an InDesign server. We've We also will be talking a little bit later about BannerUI. It's a similar technology. It's for digital ad automation. Again, for dams, built directly into dams. In this particular case, we're using both InDesign documents as well as Photoshop, Illustrator, Sketch, Figma. These are all input sources to BannerUI built right in. The third area that we built was Linker UI, which is our connector. And so this is the connector that actually puts the dam directly into the creative application. And that's kind of where we sort of came to this aha moment, where from a dam perspective, there are two things we're trying to achieve. From Linker UI's perspective, we're trying to bring the dam directly into the application. Creative professionals, Photoshop users, InDesign users, Illustrator users, they don't want to have to be bouncing back and forth between multiple applications. So if you can bring the dam right into the application, then it makes their life a lot easier because they can find assets, they can drag and drop, they can search, they can easily upload. All of any linked objects can be easily managed and found because everything's being managed through the digital asset management system. And again, it's a view right in that application. PrintUI and BannerUI kind of flips that around, and it actually puts the creative tools then directly into the dam. So there's this notion of putting the dam into the application, but then there's also this notion of putting the application into the dam. And these two other products, PrintUI and BannerUI, are really targeted at non-designers. So that really opens up the number of people who can get access to creating content. And again, it opens up the opportunity for more users of that dam. We've also started looking at, well, beyond the creative team, right? So how do you get more people using a dam? Well, the non-creatives, people, just the office workers, people who are using Microsoft Office, people who are using Google Workspace. If they're creating presentations, they're creating marketing material, they're creating sales material, they're creating, whatever corporate material, they also need access to the dam. And so Linker UI, again, provides that interface of the dam right into the applications that they use every day.
Thank you, Mark. So I think it's clear, but of course, that's the purpose. We get much more in details. And of course, at the end of this session, we get also a nice quick demonstration. So for your information, because the chat was not activated, so now you can say whatever you want to anybody here. So on my side, so Activo, so I will do it very shortly. So a consultancy company, agnostic one, and we are trying to manage to find the right path to take for every customer to find the right solution, because if you don't have one solution regarding you are retailers, agencies, brands, museum, agents, etc. So it's not the same system to be used. And of course now Activo has more or less 5 years old, so it's about 20 people really working at the heart of your customer experience. Maybe something you can say also, Ralph, regarding just DAM news. You said a couple of things, but maybe we can make a quick again introduction about DAM news, and finally, and especially since that we are working together.
Yeah, sure. DAM news been going 15, 16 years, I think. It's a trade journal, covers the entire industry, the user side and the vendor side, and some consultants. We've got, as well as an industry roundup goes out every week. We cover events and jobs, especially for digital asset managers. We've got a very extensive vendor directory with about 100 or so firms in it. We have an industry report as well, which reviews, I think there's about 16 firms at the moment, the number's increasing. We have a thing called an open specification, which is like a kind of idealized specification for a DAM. What else have we got? There's a glossary, community glossary. It's been around for, I think it predates DAM News actually, but there's that in there. Yeah, and I think it's read by the majority of the industry. Do encounter a few people who haven't heard of it, but it's quite unusual that most people know who it is, and most people read it. Yeah, we're vendor neutral, and we don't favour any specific firms. We're still quite fiercely independent in terms of the content and the industry the commentary on the industry. So yeah, I think that's probably a fair summary of what DAM News is and what we do.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. And of course, you can spend a lot of time. You can subscribe to the newsletter. You have a buyer guide, so for one package, you can get access to our amazing content. And of course, because we like DABs or something also we did, of course, to make and especially for French people, we just launched DAM News FR, so it's just French content. But by the way, so for DAM News, it's really and really appreciate the work efforts of everything you are doing. So I'm just now back to our presentation, and so this is the time to start my expert. And one of the questions we have to ask is finally why DAM is critical at this enterprise level. And of course, Mark was more or less explaining that you have so many tools today. You have here Adobe CC things since the last 35 years. We remember this time because we are veterans when we started with Photoshop 1, etc. And so, but today it's much more. It's super important finally to see what can benefits the DAM have alongside this creative operation. So maybe really to start with, of course, it's not a tech lab. Ralph, I'd like maybe if you can really make a quick pitch finally regarding what means the DAM at the enterprise level, to explain to our audience. We are not talking about bugs, Dropbox, things like that. We are talking about DAM and what can be the benefits.
Yeah, I think if you think about the role of a DAM at an enterprise level, the conceptualization I prefer to use is that of a supply chain. And a DAM essentially manages the digital asset supply chain of an organization. It's kind of like the command and control center for all the assets that come into the business and go out of it. So it's doing things like it's transforming what you might call raw media assets, so things like photos, videos, documents, and that sort of stuff, into assets by adding metadata to them. That's a key fundamental element of enterprise DAM. And then after the raw material has been converted into actual digital assets, it's then facilitating the transfer of those digital assets through all the channels that the business interacts with its users, well, its customers, sorry, and its partners and everybody else outside the business who happens to deal with it. So you can kind of think about it in terms of control as one of the main benefits. So it means bringing like order to the chaos, being able to make sure that staff get access to the latest brand compliant assets and assets that have been approved, and taking away things that haven't been, or yeah, things of that nature. And you can also think about measurement, or what you might call analytics. So basically, if the business has a DAM, you can see what people are downloading and what they're uploading and what the patterns of usage are. And from that, you can begin to start to make improvements to the overall process. This concept of supply chain management, continuous improvement, where you look at your data and say, right, okay, based on the data that we're seeing, how can we optimize what we're doing and become more efficient and deliver more of what our customers or our partners are looking for. If you have an enterprise DAM, all of those things become possible. If you don't, if you have like a bunch of Dropboxes, USB sticks and stuff on memory sticks and so on, you have no visibility of what is going on. And that's the key benefit for enterprises, is those three aspects. It's the control, measurement, and improvement, I think.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. So did I knowledge or about the dam, and I of course we do agree with everything you was saying. So now back to Max. So okay, we know that you have a great background experience regarding everything about creative operations since the last 30 years, etc. Since the Adobe CC started, because as you were saying, you are working for them. So, but finally, what we saw, and we are also witness of this new way of working by designers. So, how do you see finally, and especially since the COVID, the way designers are working today? Because as you said, since so many years we have Photoshop, InDesign, etc. Of course, at the beginning we have some Express things, but by the way, today it's there's no real competition, even if we have some a new one just like Affinity, etc. But most of the time it comes back to Photoshop and InDesign. But how do you see finally here since a couple of time? Because as we know, InDesign, Photoshop requires some skills. Okay, you cannot start without, you need some training, compared to some tools that we know today where it's more, or at least some people are waiting to get something easier to use. So what is your vision regarding this evolution of the way of by creative operation, how they are working with the tools and maybe waiting for something new?
Yeah, when I was at Adobe, we had this, we actually had a team working on some non-traditional tools, and they were working on this sort of phrase, good enough. The idea, Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, it's pretty heavy lifting, well, learning how to use a tool and using a tool. In today's world where everything is so dynamic and so quick, how do you get content developed quickly without having to have these, highly skilled technical people? Because in many respects, learning Photoshop and Illustrator and those is a very technical thing, as well as a very creative thing. So how do you strip away the technical parts of tools to make it really much easier from a creative point of view? And so I think, you see things like Canva and even, Express, Adobe Express. These tools, they're online. They're not these heavy desktop tools. So they're online, and that makes it easier for people to collaborate. If the tool's online, that means the content's online, and you can store things online, and everything. You can shorten the time from the spark of the idea to getting it out on something, and then collaborate and get people to comment on it. You can apply new technologies like AI to improve and to assist the process. So I think that the obviously in the enterprise tools like the Adobe Creative Cloud are still very, very important. But at the same time, we have to recognize that things are moving faster, and faster means perhaps you need more people and who are perhaps less technically skilled at things like Photoshop, but they're more creatively skilled. And what are the tools that you can provide to them that, and how can you get not only the right tools, but the right content to them? Again, that's, has a lot to do with this, the fact that things are going online. That means the data can be online, so that I can quickly find an asset, I can quickly create an asset, and I can quickly, again, collaborate with one of my colleagues. And so I think those are the areas that that we see happening. And so this whole idea of cloud creativity, I think is really important, and that's just going to continue to grow and explode over time.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe something I'd like to do is, because we had a survey, and so I wanted to start a poll that we're, oops, okay, and so okay, so normally you should see at the top of your screen a very simple question is regarding the job you have to do, or your content you have to create. Today, as Mark was explaining, are you using Adobe CC, Canva, Adobe Express, or at least maybe no one of them, and just doing everything on your desktop, uploading the files, downloading the files. So just let us know. We've got a few seconds. And so, of course, we have an idea, but we are also very interesting to get your feedback. Just a few seconds. Interesting. Okay, so at that moment, it's very interesting. We have more or less the same, more or less is 50% for using Adobe CC, maybe thanks to plugin, etc., as you said. But in the same time, we have the same number of people that they are using no one of them. And this is more or less what we are thinking. In fact, that you're just working on your desktop, uploading the files, and we have a very few percentage using Canva and nobody for Express. But by the way, it just so I would just enter the oops, okay, oops, I will end up the poll just now. Okay. And so finally, Mark, you said that something which was very interesting. Of course, we have veterans just like us who are used to launch Photoshop, in design, managing layers and all the capabilities, even if I do think that most of the time people are not aware about all the capabilities of layers, fusions, etc. in Photoshop. But in the meantime, how and especially thanks to your development, your technology, and your experience, how you can bring something live on the web, just like as we will see uploading a Photoshop file and just doing everything online to collaborate and personalize. So what are the tools finally regarding the way people are now working today, how you transform, how you can bring this solution, PrintUI and BannerUI at the top. So.
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things is, trying to break down the barriers of getting content in the hands of the right people. For example, I know that in our experience, particularly big companies, they have a relatively small design team, but the demand for content is exploding, and so the design team themselves can't keep up with it. So how do you leverage their skills across the enterprise, right? So if the design team is using some of these applications like Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, how can you leverage their skills and put their skills in the hands of non-designers that are out in the field, out in the organization? And how can you break down the barriers of getting the content to them and then putting it in a form that traditionally skilled designers can create content? So, how do you put bounds around the branding guidelines so that those can't get changed, but you can put the tools in the hands of the marketing people and the local sales representatives, the distributors, so that they can change the content appropriate for their region. And that content might be, it might be as simple as an address. It might be a language. How can you do the localization in a way that, maybe the original campaign, for example, is designed in English, but it needs to be deployed in France and in Germany and in, Japan. How do you put those tools? So, so that means putting things online, having all of the tools connected to that online source, and then provide the technology. Where does AI fit into this? Can you use AI not necessarily as just a regenerative technology, but something that can actually assist? So if you're doing localization, how can AI perhaps understand the context of a campaign so that when it gets translated into another language for a different region, then the cultural context also gets translated. Those are the kind of things that I think we need to do as we look forward in this new world. And again, the DAM is the center of providing all this collaboration and access, making sure all the content is up to date. If you have a lot of people working on content, somebody changes a core Photoshop file, for example, how does that get distributed throughout all of the other places where that Photoshop file might be used? That has to be managed some way. And so technology like DAMs, using technology like our Linker UI that has the ability to track assets and links, can keep that all up to date.
Okay, so finally, which is good, so you can start working with Photoshop. Finally, at the end of the day, you just have to upload this content or InDesign in your system, and you can start collaborating, doing mass personalization, localization, etc. Is it correct?
Correct.
Okay, so finally, and that's something we see also, and especially thinking about the future, and if you are trying to think about the future of creative operations, most of young people today, just years ago, they have some skills just like Photoshop, Illustrator, etc. And now we have seen more and more, it's Monday, Canva, etc., etc. So one other thing maybe is to think about how finally, because we do not see so many evolutions regarding the UI or the complexity of the thing. So, and today, as you said, people need to do something very simple. As Jonathan Ives was saying years ago, it's simplicity and clarity and efficiency. So, okay, and so sometimes we see a lot of people who are asking us, yeah, I use Canva, etc. But if you are looking at what Canva is doing, it's very I would say, for the end user. You don't have something as who are talking enterprise. If you are trying to manage search, etc., or even using plugins, it's very limited. So finally, how do you find the way to make something Canva at the enterprise level using your own technology?
How do we? Sorry, could you restate the question?
Now, I just said on your side, Santa Cruz, and especially with BannerUI, you put something at the top of the web finally to do what Canva is doing today, but at the enterprise level.
Yeah, so Canva is a great tool. As Frédéric mentioned, it's really a tool that is targeted at end users, individuals, perhaps small working groups. The question is, again, if you're thinking about this in a global sense and an enterprise sense, how do you tie an enterprise together with a tool or a set of tools? Technologies like Canva and even like Adobe Express don't have that connectivity. They don't have the notion of an enterprise. They don't have the notion of a large group of people or a large database of content that can be integrated, and that tools can be enhanced through things like like AI at an enterprise level. I think in a few minutes we actually have a slide that kind of goes through some of these the similarities and differences. So I mean, from a functionality point of view, just moving bits around, tools for the most part are tools. Everybody pretty much has the same set of tools. But then the question is, how do you implement it at scale for an enterprise? And I think that's where the difference really lies.
Yeah, for sure. And something maybe we can say, because we had some questions during the week regarding PrintUI and BannerUI, but of course, some of our end user and customers said, okay, but InDesign is done for the print and digital, or both of them, or just print, etc. So maybe you can bring some information regarding why InDesign is not, even if when you start a new document in InDesign, you have a choice between print, digital. But at the end of the day, we know that sometimes we have some slowness using InDesign server, blah, blah, etc. So what makes the difference for you, Mark, regarding your experience? InDesign is done for digital or print, or both of them?
Well, I mean, if you think about it just from a file format point of view, it could be either, right? I mean, InDesign can put out a PNG or a JPEG, as well as any of the applications. I think the question is, what InDesign is really a document tool, right? It's a multi-page document tool. It's a book tool. It's a magazine tool. It's a newspaper tool. So it's not really optimized for like high volume digital output. If you're talking about needing 25 different outputs in different orientations and resolutions and so on and so forth, InDesign is not optimized for that. It certainly can do that, and we actually have customers who are using InDesign for digital output. But if you really want to streamline the process, you put the tool in the hands of the people who know what they're doing and have a very specific solution. So we have PrintUI, which can do digital output, but we also have BannerUI, which is really optimized for integration with new technologies like AI, localization, database driven. A lot of times in the way content is created today, it's all through a database. So our technology has VDP, variable data API ability. So you can just shove a database at it, and it'll produce all this content for digital output. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. And so before moving to the demonstration that you did, because of course Ralph, you were talking about metadata, etc., because at the top of this document that you have online, you have custom information that can be sent back to the DAM. So for you, Ralph, so finally, regarding your experience, finally, how you can measure the return of investment of a DAM system linked to your such capabilities to edit online, etc.
Yeah, DAM ROI is one of these vexatious subjects, because I think DAM ROI overall, it tends to be quite a hard thing to prove. You used to see all these things, especially from vendors, where they'd say, right, okay, the average employee costs this amount of dollars per hour, and the DAM will save this number of hours per year. So therefore, you can multiply that by multiply the two figures together and get this amazing saving. And those sort of ROI comparisons, they just don't work, because traditionally DAM, it's lots of small, quite micro ROI improvements. One thing I would say is the editing tools, such as PrintUI and those of that ilk, they are an area where you can measure the ROI much more easily. Basically, because you really what you're doing is you're putting in the ability for end users to produce branded creative material that historically you'd have to involve a graphic studio, an in-house graphic studio, or possibly an agency, and there'd be this bottleneck of basic production work that you'd end up having to farm out to them. And yeah, it would obviously cost time and money. With these editing tools that are available now, you can actually measure that in terms of the outcomes that you're getting from that, and say, right, okay, we can see how much money that we're saving in terms of agency basic production costs, not needing such a large in-house graphic studio. And we can see that campaigns are being delivered that much quicker, and we haven't got this big backlog of minor work to deliver. So that's, yeah, I would say that is one area where the ROI case is much clearer and easier to prove in the context of DAM.
Thank you, Ralph. So I think this is the time to start with the demonstration. So we just provide you a full HD. So now you can get the voiceover mic at any time you want.
Sure. So there's going to be, this is like, I think, a couple of minutes each. Two different demos. This one is an example. This is our Linker UI product. This is an example of bringing the DAM into the application. So this is InDesign. And so you can see on the right here, the Linker UI interface. And so this is actually a view right into the DAM. And so I can see that I have an InDesign document here, and I can open it. One thing to notice is there's a little bit of there's a red triangle up here. That's giving me an alert that something's amiss here. There's something wrong with this, or maybe there's a link that's out of it's not, you know, the current version. And so what it actually is showing us here that I have an image in my InDesign document that is missing. InDesign doesn't know where this image is, but Linker UI knows that image is up in the DAM. And so again, this is one of these great examples of if I'm a designer, I would have to somehow go look for any broken links or any missing links. But with the DAM built into the native application, we can track all of this. We can go back, we can look back into the DAM and find some likely candidates and then provide that as an option. Hey, how about these images? Do these make sense to you? Is this the right one? And so then we can update it. And so now this InDesign document is clean. The links are found, the links are all there. If anybody happens to be using a Photoshop file that's embedded into this InDesign document and checks it back into the DAM, again, what will happen is there'll be a link reference that says, hey, somebody changed that Photoshop file. Do you want to update it? So again, bringing the DAM into the application. This is using our templating technology, and we're using Adobe Experience Manager here. So this is that example of bringing the creative tool into the DAM. And so I'm a user. I want to create a new, single page brochure or a banner ad or what have you. I search the DAM for the document that I'm interested in. I click on an edit button and it loads. So this is our editor. This happens to be an InDesign document. Again, it's a native InDesign document. When this gets rendered, it will be rendered by an InDesign server. So you'll know exactly what the quality is based on the fact that it's the same tool that the designer originally had set up. So a simple interface. The user who's not a designer has the ability to edit certain things, but everything else is locked down. So there's no brand, breaking of brand guidelines. You can turn on and off things like, how much styling the end user can do. Can they do any styling? You can turn it off so they can't do any styling at all. All they can do is make changes to text. You can let them change imagery, and that imagery will come from the DAM. And they will only be able to access imagery that they have permission to access, because it's all part of the DAM. They can preview what the output looks like. And then when they're done, again, this will get rendered by an InDesign server. And as you can see here, okay, I want to output a PDF. I get to pick whatever PDF preset I want. And it's going to be saved to AEM. So right now what's happening is it's going off and going to the InDesign server, rendering the output, and then coming back and saying, now you see that output has been saved at AEM. And now I can review the output. Here, we were talking earlier about metadata. So right here in the interface now, I have the whole metadata schema. I can, one of the things that designers hate doing is my experience at Adobe, they don't really like having to deal with metadata. So if you make it as simple as possible, so it's right there. So they can just, they've done the work, they make the change, they add the metadata, it's all in the DAM, it's all being managed, everybody can find it, and it's super clean.
Thank you, Mark, for this great demonstration. And so, as you said, so, oops, that's here. That's the second video.
Yeah, we already saw that.
No, that's yes, I'm sorry. Oops. Yes, this is the one I wanted to share. So we are talking just before. Okay, at one time you need to compare different systems. Okay, so we're talking about Canva. Canva is doing a great job, but is it the right tool at the enterprise level or not, compared to Adobe Express? So maybe you try to find the way to compare side by side the different options. Can you tell us a little bit more about this survey you did?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, BannerUI is a brand new product. So you can see there's a couple of these little blue diamonds here. So those are things that we are in development of. But essentially, and that'll be done in like the next month or so. Essentially, from just a pure functionality point of view, again, tools are tools. They do all the same thing. They import the same stuff, allow editing. We're also adding assisted layout. So this idea of AI helping the layout of the documents, localization. I mentioned earlier about the localization. So we'll be doing AI localization. So again, from just a pure function by function perspective, all very similar. Maybe we go about it one way, Express does it a different way, Canva does it a different way, but in the end, they all work the same. So if we go on to the next slide, the difference kind of then comes down to, in what kind of world do they exist, right? We mentioned earlier that Express and Canva, it pretty much exists in a world of their own. I mean, obviously, Adobe Express works within the Creative Cloud environment, but in terms of like an enterprise world, Express and Canva kind of work, in their own world. BannerUI and PrintUI and LinkerUI are designed from their very core. They are architected to be built into enterprise DAMs. So it's not an afterthought. I think, Canva and Express will have maybe plugins that let you, talk to a DAM, but in their core, they're standalone applications. In its core, BannerUI is an integrated technology. It is meant to work within an enterprise environment.
And so we have a question from Martin asking us, and especially regarding the poll, where we see nobody on Adobe Express. So he's asking us, I'm just taking the question on just now, but do you think Adobe Express will be the first choice for creatives in the future instead of Adobe CC, as soon as you are already support for Adobe Express?
No, I don't believe. So if I understand the question, will Adobe Express replace Photoshop? I think the answer is no. I think personally, I believe Adobe is very invested, 100% invested in their core CC applications. I believe they will evolve. Adobe Express, I believe, is Adobe's effort at sort of stepping into that world, like the Canva world, and they're learning. Adobe loves to they're a big enough company and a creative enough company to understand that they have to make inroads, but I believe those inroads will eventually flow back to the Creative Cloud applications over time.
Yeah, and especially we saw that just beginning of this week, Adobe unveiled the fact that in Photoshop you can start to do some collaborating things alongside between users, etc. So we'll see, by the way. Yes, so we have time for question and answer. of course, I will start with my own one, because you said, Mark, and also Ralph, that of course what can be the future of creative operations, a personalization of content, and of course one of the things I'm thinking about is what can be the role of AI alongside these capabilities. We saw that in the past, whether it's Canva or Adobe, they are talking about AI to help with creativity, etc. So how do you see to get smart AI and especially generative AI? Because I know that, Mark, you did something at the top.
I did something at the top?
At the top of BannerUI, etc. Something is cooking on your side to help designers to create, just typing a prompt, etc., just to bring ideas at the top in order to start. It's just an help for designer to start with something.
Yeah. So we have our Santa Cruz Software Labs AI team is working on a number of AI initiatives. I believe the one that you're referring to is the ability to just, if you want a place to start, type in a sentence. I want a banner ad for a New Year's golf tournament, and so our AI will create the basic banner ad. What's interesting about the way we're approaching this is we're basing that on the input from the particular enterprise. So we know that a particular enterprise has these brand guidelines, so that whatever we render will be appropriate to those brand guidelines. So every time you do one of these renderings, it's unique to every company, because every company will have their own set of guidelines, their own specifications on how this output is done. So that's kind of a thing that we're looking at as a longer term initiative. Our real focus on AI right now is in what we just refer to as assisted AI. So when you take a portrait banner ad and you need to rotate it to be a landscape banner ad, how do objects move appropriately? How do you fill in the white space? How do you reposition the imagery appropriately for the different aspect ratio or orientation? What we refer to again as assisted layout. And again, I mentioned earlier the idea of AI for cultural localization, not just translating the words, but translate the words in context to the region and the idea of the banner ad.
And so, Ralph, regarding your experience and especially this AI at the top, we know that we saw some initiatives in some dam system last year, but it's not clear enough. So most of the time it's all about tags, etc. So in the meantime, as we saw on our French side, we never were French translations. But by the way, how do you see finally how AI can bring some disruptive technology at the top alongside what we saw with Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the two most obvious ways it's likely to go is firstly, there's going to be a lot more manipulation of assets within the dam. So there's things like where at the moment inside a dam you'd be doing stuff like saying, right, okay, I want to crop this image, or I want to upsample it, change the format or whatever. You're going to get a lot more kind of what you might call photo retouching tasks that are done via one of these prompt interfaces directly within the dam itself. So again, so you're not having to call out for either reshoots or photo retouches. I can see that sort of stuff coming in. Mark touched on it before about generating collateral in localized collateral, something that AI can do for you in the cultural context. I think the other one as well is possibly people doing more less searching, more generating And because the path of least resistance seems to be, right, okay, why should I bother as an end user trying to find this specific asset? Why don't I just type in this into this prompt what I want and let it come up with what I'm after, basically? And that's an interesting double-edged sword, because obviously from the user perspective, that's a lot quicker. But on the other hand, how can you manage that as digital asset managers, brand managers, enterprises? Because what the AI comes out with may not be something that's appropriate to be used. So I think there's going to be a lot of areas with that. And basically monitoring management of the prompts, and how do we give the users what they want in terms of the flexibility and ease of use with prompt-based image generation, while at the same time protecting against some of the risks.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. I've got one question for you, Mark, from here. Our audience is, do I have to do something specific when I'm working on my Photoshop files with my DAM in order to maybe downsize or for your tool, or is it finally more or less, how do you manage the integration? Of course, I've got an idea regarding ranges, etc. But I think the question is really, does the designer has to do something specific to manage everything, especially online editing on your side?
That's a great question. Generally speaking, the answer is no. But practically speaking, there needs to be some constraints, right? I mean, Photoshop files can be, 10 gigabytes and 1,000 layers. And if the purpose of what you're using this Photoshop file is to create banner ads and digital content, it's not really practical to throw any system something that complicated, that complex. So no, there's no specific limitations, but there's just the practical limitation of what's the purpose of the file I'm starting with, what I'm trying to get out of it, and then basically tailoring the input appropriately. That's the way I would put it.
Okay, and one other question is regarding PrintUI and BannerUI. So what type of file I can use with the system? Is it InDesign linked to PrintUI and Photoshop to BannerUI? Can you bring much more information?
Sure. PrintUI is limited to InDesign documents only. And it could be pretty much any version of InDesign. We're fully compatible all the way back to, like, I think CC 5.5 or something, all the way to the current 2024 or 25 version. In the case of BannerUI, right now it's Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, and eventually will be Figma and Canva. We're going to be opening it up to a broader set of inputs. But right now we're very focused on Photoshop because we believe that's where most people are. But also then Illustrator, InDesign, and many other applications. We're very, I'm going to say, demand driven. So when our partners come to us and say we want, our customers are saying we need this input, we will be supporting that newer input format.
Yeah. And a very last question, but more coming from my side, because we know that in Canada you can move from print to video. What about video on your side?
Yeah, BannerUI will be supporting video animation, so you can throw on a video into the banner. You can throw animation onto it. There are tools for creating the animation. And as you probably remember from the slide, there was a diamond for advanced editing. So we are going to be creating things like timeline editing for the video and so on. Those are not there yet, but they will be added over time, so that we have some very advanced editing tools for both video and imagery.
Thank you so much, Mark. And just to end up this webinar, maybe Ralph, you can talk about the white paper you did with Mark, etc.
The Santa Cruz white paper. I think we have details in this of we've got a breakdown of creative tools and how they integrate with dams, and all the different aspects of the issues that come up with that, and how they're addressed, and what they are with the future of dam. So I'd encourage everybody to have a good look at the paper.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, great pleasure to get all of you in 1 hour session with seminar alongside what we can do in 2025 at the enterprise of DAM. Thanks to Santa Cruz Software Technologies. So we saw 3 main milestone: LinkUI, PrintUI, BannerUI. So feel free to stamp again our expert, and especially Mark. For Santa Cruz Software, you can ask for any demonstration. All the team is ready to demonstrate all the technologies. Do not hesitate to ask for Ralph as the main DAM milestone if you have any questions regarding everything. And of course, as I said at the beginning, you get all the access to the content we do. Because by Activo, we have an amazing team working on videos, or you get something very super design and crazier in the next days that we can propose you instead of watching 1 hour, but of course the 1 hour replay session will be sent to you and all our registrants. So thank you so much. Happy New Year. And just the last word for you, Mark and Ralph.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure talking with you all, and I hope that you got some important and valuable information out of the time we spent.
I'd echo what Mark said. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Have a good day, and keep you posted. Bye-bye.